Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 6 Part 16 based on novel. So let's start. A fierceness swept out from within the spatial swirl and permeated the entire place. The temperature seemed to have become icy cold at this moment. Many gazes within the ancient hall were slightly stunned when they looked towards the spatial swirl that opened up once again. Clearly, they were shocked by the terrifying fierce aura that had suddenly appeared. The eyes of Xu Qianhua and Mu Huang also so elated at this moment. They immediately looked at the spatial swirl while the playful expression on their faces from earlier was reduced slightly. Being in possession of such an aura, it was likely that this person was not like those upstart dark horses whom they have met before, who had become strong overnight by relying on treasures. An extremely strong figure slowly surfaced from within the spatial swirl under the focus of countless number of gazes. After which, the figure walked forward and appeared in front of everyone while being accompanied by a fierce aura that permeated around it. The body of the strong giant-like figure was covered with glaring scars. They crossed each other like numerous climbing centipedes. A black-colored metal rod was being supported on his shoulders, causing him to appear like a mountain-moving demon that had originated from ancient times. His aura was frightening. The body of that mountain General Mu Huang was already quite dazzling. However, in the face of this giant-like body, he seemed somewhat insignificant. Little Flame. Lin Dong was initially startled as he watched this strong figure that had stepped forward. A joyful expression immediately surged within his eyes. This figure was naturally Little Flame, who had exited from his retreat in the White Tiger Hall. After 4 months of harsh bitter training, Little Flame's aura had already become quite terrifying. This kind of fierceness caused even Lin Dong to feel a little fearful. He really did not know just what kind of harsh training Little Flame had underwent during this period of time. Big brother. The scarlet color in Little Flame's blood-red wild beast-like eyes disappeared like a torrent when his gaze swept onto Lin Dong. A silly smile appeared on the fierce face, completely destroying the fierce atmosphere that was created earlier. Some of the sharp-eyed individuals swept their gazes over Lin Dong and Little Flame with some surprise upon seeing this scene. Clearly, it was unexpected that this fellow who appeared like a fierce beast from the ancient times would actually reveal such a silly appearance in front of Lin Dong. Little Martin by the side crossed his arms over his chest, as his gaze looked at Little Flame with great interest. He smilingly said, "Hee, it seems that this fellow had gained quite a bit during this period of time. Second brother, do you have a physical body now?" Little Flame turned his attention towards Little Martin, before he parted his mouth and smiled. Although it was the first time that he had seen Little Martin in this form, he was still able to sense a familiar scent from the latter through his sharp senses. Little Martin nodded lazily. Soon after, he suddenly recalled something and his expression immediately changed. He spoke angrily, "What nonsense, second brother? I am the big brother. Grandpa Martin has lived for a longer time than the both of you added together." Little Flame scratched his head. After which, he grabbed the black-colored rod in his hand and spoke in an honest and upright manner, "Big brother said that you are the second brother. Therefore, you are the second brother." Little Martin's handsome face had directly turned into something like a pig's liver upon hearing this. It seemed like he was about to jump in fury. "Isn't it a little too comical to put up such a show here?" This unpleasant interruption appeared from Xu Qianhua's mouth. At this moment, the smile on his face had already disappeared. His eyes were densely cold as he stared at Little Flame before he slowly said, "You are the first who dares to order my great Gan Empire to get lost. Then let's fight." The simple and honest look on Little Flame's face disappeared almost instantly. He did not say any unnecessary words. The metal rod in his hair emitted a whistle as it tore through the air before it directly pointed towards Xu Qianhua. Immediately, a fierce aura once again burst out from within his body. The expression in Xu Qianhua's group eyes sunk slowly upon seeing this. It was clear that this was the first time that they had met a person who dared to act so arrogantly in front of him. "This is not the first time that I have met people who think that they are some hotshot, just because they have obtained an inheritance. However, it is the first time I have met someone like you who acts so arrogantly. Xu Qianhua inhaled a deep breath of air. A smile once again appeared on his face. However, this smile contained a dense killing intent. It seemed that the attitude of Lin Dong's group had already begun to infuriate this great person, who was one of the 4 generals of the Great Gan Empire. We are members of the Great Gan Empire. That Mu Huang, who had been silent, suddenly slowly opened his mouth and spoke. His low and deep voice carried a rich pressure. Those last 3 words could be considered an existence that no one could afford to offend in this ancient battlefield. I know. However, just these 3 words is far from enough to get us to surrender the inheritance that we have obtained with great difficulty. Lin Dong also smiled. He was aware of the pressure that these 3 words brought. At the same time, however, it was impossible for him to shrink back because of it. They had put in too much effort for this inheritance. Forget about the super empires. Even if the super sects wanted them to obediently hand over the inheritance, Lin Dong would pounce and bite them if he was pushed too far. The entire city had become much quieter at this moment. Everyone here had some skills and could naturally clearly hear the words from the sky that were not specially hidden. When they heard Lin Dong's words, quite a number of them inhaled a deep breath of cold air within their hearts. They had already heard that this fellow was afraid of nothing. However, they did not expect that Lin Dong would actually act so tough in the face of such a super empire. Humph, what hard bones. Tianjin, who was in front of the gold-colored hall, also laughed coldly as he looked at the sky. His eyes contained a rich gloating expression. He knew that the attitude of Lin Dong's group would seal their only retreat route. You will regret this. Xu Qianhua strangely did not become furious when he heard Lin Dong's reply. Instead, he spoke in a calm manner. A smile also appeared on Mu Huang's silent face behind. This smile seemed to contain some ridicule. His large hands were slowly curled before a majestic aura suddenly swept out from within his body like a storm. Bang! Little Flame walked forward. The shadow from his large body directly covered Mu Huang. A fierce glint also flashed across his eyes, while the metal rod in his hand tore through the air and furiously smashed towards Mu Huang. Mu Huang's eyes were cold. He leaped forward and a bright golden glow instantly surged over his body. A genuine gold arm directly made a head-on contact with the metal rod. Clang! A clear sound of metal coming into contact sounded. Energy ripples that could be seen with the naked eyes immediately surged out. The surrounding air emitted an ear-piercing humming sound under that kind of pressure. A wild storm swept forth, causing Little Flames and Mu Huang's body to shake violently. After which, both of them actually took half a step back in unison. This scene appeared in the many eyes within the ancient hall. Immediately, the expressions of quite a number of people changed. Most of the people here had heard of the strength of Mu Huang. It is rumored that he possessed the ability to attempt the 4th Nirvana tribulation. Moreover, he was a powerful person who had already advanced into the Nirvana ranking. Originally, everyone thought that the result of the fight between these two would definitely be a completely one-sided one. However, they did not expect that these two were actually equal. Had Lin Dong's lineup unknowingly become this powerful? Bang! Little Flame's half a step back had just landed when he forcefully stabilized his body. The blood glint within his eyes became even denser instead. A bloodthirsty desire for battle slowly stirred on his face. In the next instant, Little Flame's foot stomped onto the sky and actually transformed into a blood glow that shot forward. The metal rod in his hand transformed into countless number of wild and violent rod shadows. They were just like a storm that carried a shocking momentum as they covered Mu Huang. Humph! Xu Qianhua's expression immediately turned densely cold when he saw that Little Flame had actually directly bypassed him and attacked Mu Huang. He clenched his fist and a bright red fire spear appeared. The spear shook, forming a sharp arc as it swiftly penetrated towards Little Flame's throat. Clang! However, just before Xu Qianhua's attack was 10 feet away from Little Flame, a cold glow rushed over and actually directly hit the tip of the spear. Lin Dong's body also appeared in front of Xu Qianhua at the same time. Allow me to be your opponent. You should not interfere in their battle. Lin Dong held the heavenly crocodile bone spear in his hand and softly spoke. He smilingly looked at Zhu Tianhua, whose eyes had slowly become dark and solemn. Are you certain you have the qualifications? Zhu Tianhua stared at Lin Dong. The smile on the corner of his mouth gradually showed traces of ferocity. Lin Dong smiled. Without saying anything more, as he slowly raised the heavenly crocodile bone spear in his hand, he pointed his finger towards Zhu Tianhua in the horizon. That provocation was something that went without saying. You are a person on the Nirvana ranking. Will I possess the qualification to advance into the Nirvana ranking if I defeat you? The rage on the corner of Zhu Tianhua's mouth became increasingly dense. He no longer had the same casual appearance as before. This frightening ripple slowly spread out from his body. His sinister voice resounded over this ancient hall. You think too much. A dead person will not have any qualification. Everyone's heart was shaken when Zhu Tianhua's killing intent became denser. They knew that Zhu Tianhua would not let this matter rest today. Formidable Yuan power surged out of Zhu Tianhua's body in an instant. Its undulations far exceeded the power of an ordinary 3 Yuan Nirvana stage practitioner. When he felt those undulations, Lin Dong's expression grew a little more serious. Even though Zhu Tianhua's tone was arrogant, one could not deny that he did have the right to be so. Such a display of strength indeed surpassed those dark horses who had become powerful by finding some treasures. However, Lin Dong's strength was not gained overnight with the help of treasures. From the moment he stepped into the ancient battlefield with his initial advanced manifestation stage strength, he worked steadily and experienced numerous bloody battles and bitter trainings before attaining the what he had today. Therefore, if Zhu Tianhua were to treat Lin Dong like any other tactless dark horses, the result would severely exceed Zhu Tianhua's expectations. Little Martin, leave him to me. There's no need for you to do anything, Lin Dong suddenly said as he turned his head and casted a glance at Little Martin. Upon hearing this, Little Martin frowned slightly. However, he knew that Lin Dong was worried that Little Martin might accidentally reveal his identity. Hence, he could only wave his hand and lazily reply, sure. I have no desire to fight this kind of opponent anyway. Hearing these words, Lin Dong helplessly shook his head before turning around. Sure enough, he saw Zhu Tianhua's expression darken. It appeared that he was quite annoyed by Little Martin's words. I hope both of you can still be so willful later on. Zhu Tianhua roared. Boundless Yuan power surrounded his body and spread out like gushing tides. He slowly raised the scarlet spear in his hands and pointed its cold tip at Lin Dong. Lin Dong raised his eyebrows a little. Just as he was about to say something, the chilliness in Zhu Tianhua's eyes erupted. Suddenly, his body lunged forward as he brandished the scarlet spear. Numerous streaks of blazing razor-sharp spears were aimed at Lin Dong's body's vital points. Ding ding. As the spears charged at Lin Dong, equivalently razor-sharp bone spear shadows swept up and collided ferociously with the spears. Immediately, sparks erupted as a violent gust of wind swept out from their point of contact. After withstanding such an offense from Zhu Tianhua, Lin Dong advanced instead of pulling back. With a step forward and a jerk of his arms, the bone spear in his hands drew a crafty arc in the air before ruthlessly thrusting towards Zhu Tianhua's heart. Humph! When Zhu Tianhua saw how merciless Lin Dong's attack was, he gave a cold snort. Following which, the body of his spear oddly curved at an astonishing angle and forcibly deflected the incoming bone spear. Swish swish! After Lin Dong's attack was stopped, his eyes flickered as frenzied attacks once again exploded. Both of them were experts in using the spear. As they exchanged blows, spear shadows danced across the entire sky. Each of them occupied one side of the sky as the twinkling sparks that emerged dazzled everyone's eyes. Countless gazes were fixed onto the ancient hall. As the two exchanged blows, some perceptive practitioners' faces grew increasingly solemn. They had realized that Lin Dong did not show any signs of being in a disadvantageous position, even in the face of such powerful attacks from Zhu Tianhua. The bone spear in his hand was able to perfectly block Zhu Tianhua's attacks. At this moment, all the onlookers clearly understood that Lin Dong's capabilities had strengthened in countable times since he had first stepped into the ancient battlefield. Meanwhile, on the other side, Little Flame and Mountain General Nuhuang were in a different kind of battle. Both of them were experts in fighting with brute force. The current battle depicted continuous collisions between fists and metal rod, an extremely visually satisfying sight. Nuhuang's body was engulfed by a resplendent golden glow. Clearly, he had pushed his nirvana golden body to its limit. In contrast, Little Flame was covered in a glowing blood-colored armor. An intense fiendish aura spread out from his body and seemed to have a suppressing effect on Nuhuang. Little Flame was originally a demonic beast and had underwent numerous arduous trainings. Even though Nuhuang had done a remarkable job on training his physical body, it was clear that he still was not on par with Little Flame. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sonic boom, the black metal rod tore through the air. The moment the rod caught a tiny mistake, it passed through Nuhuang's defense and slammed heavily on his shoulder. Thump! A powerful and violent force exploded on Nuhuang's shoulder. Nuhuang's muscular body was knocked back several steps after a single blow from Little Flame's rod. The golden glow on his shoulder dimmed slightly as well. Crash! Naturally, this scene was witnessed by all the onlookers below. Immediately, a series of alarmed gasps broke out in the city. Apparently, no one expected a nobody like Little Flame would be able to obtain an advantageous position over Nuhuang in a fight. In front of the Golden Hall, Jinjin's facial expression changed slightly when he saw this scene. It appeared that the mysterious sect inheritance had benefited the Lindong duo substantially. Otherwise, they would not be able to accomplish such feats. As Jinjin thought of this, his expression turned extremely resentful and furious. Originally, he was the one who should have received a great boost in power from the inheritance. You bastards, do you think it's so easy to deal with the 4 generals of the Great Gan Empire? I'm afraid it's still too early to be pleased with yourselves. Jinjin sneered sinisterly as a sinister look appeared in his eyes. Swoosh! Lindong's razor-sharp bone spear swept past Xu Qianhua's ear at lightning speed, the chilling wind that resulted lifted up strands of hairs. Quickly after, Lindong's palm shot out and collided ferociously with Xu Qianhua's palm. A low and deep sound was echoed out as a gust of wind swept across the area. Both of their bodies were simultaneously pushed back. Quite capable. You are indeed different from those dark horses that I have seen so far, Xu Qianhua said as he touched his ear while icily staring at Lindong. Lindong's body was as upright as a spear. The bone spear in his hand was pointed towards the ground at an angle while his entire body was raged with boundless yuan power. His display of might did not lose out to Xu Qianhua at all. It seems that your comrade is no match for my brother, Lindong smiled indifferently as he shot a glance at the other ongoing battle. It's a bit too early to come to such conclusion, Xu Qianhua coldly chuckled. Soon after, his facial expression gradually tensed up and his hands began to form a series of strange hand seals. Meanwhile, the bubbling yuan power around his body suddenly flared up. I'm different from those similar to yourselves who rely on an inheritance. The foundation of a super empire is not something that people like you from a low-rank empire can imagine. Boom! Just as Xu Qianhua was about to take action, a deep explosion sound suddenly rang out from the battle on the other side. One could only watch as Nuhuang's body appeared to expand in size while waves of mighty and frantic yuan power swept across the area. Lindong observed the sudden increase in energy fluctuations around the Xu Qianhua duo's bodies, his eyes turning more serious as he spoke softly, finally revealing your true powers. As his hand seals changed, the yuan power around Xu Qianhua's body was oddly becoming bright red. From afar, it looked akin to a sea of fire that was burning the horizon. As the sea of fire expanded, Xu Qianhua's body turned scarlet as well. The color of his fiery red hair deepened to a dark reddish hue until it seemed as if his hair was like flowing fresh blood. Practically every eye in the entire city was fixed onto the sky. They could feel the horror of the offense that was about to launch by the Xu Qianhua duo. It appeared that the Xu Qianhua duo did not wish for the fight to drag on any longer. Lindong, the fact that both of you are able to push us to this stage is definitely something to be proud of. As the sea of fire expanded, Xu Qianhua's booming voice thundered from within. Accompanying his voice was a scorching sound wave. Xu Qianhua's figure was faintly discernible in the sea of fire. In the next instant, the sea of fire began to roll over and over as the space above the sea of fire started to shatter and an enormous shadow that was entirely engulfed in flames gradually emerged. Boom! As this fiery figure appeared, the temperature rapidly rose, causing the yuan power around to boil in an instant. Roar! Meanwhile, Mu Huang's body grew dozens of feet. The color of his skin rapidly turned an earthly brown and one could even see cracks and vein patterns on his skin which gave off the feeling of heaviness and the stability of a mountain. From afar, Mu Huang had basically become a small mountain. Gasp! Numerous gasps rang out across the entire city, every gaze filled with fear and fervor. Such martial arts were something they yearned for day and night. As expected of a super empire, interesting. The sea of fire was reflected in Lin Dong's eyes. As the flames rose, his arm lowered slightly before his slender hand slowly reached out from his sleeve. In the depths of his eyes, traces of a dancing flame surged out. Lin Dong, next, we will let both of you witness the soul martial arts of the great Gan Empire. You will have no regrets dying to these martial arts. A deep voice suddenly echoed out from the sea of fire. The next moment, the flames began to burn frantically as the blazing figure completely formed. Flame demon spirit, burn the everything under the sky. Barbaric mountain body, shift the mountains. Terrifying energy waves swept down from the sky like a hurricane. The next instant, the sea of fire promptly dissipated as tall an enormous figure dozens of feet tall and completely engulfed in flames appeared before everyone's eyes. Boom! Nearby, Mu Huang's body finally stopped expanding. Traces of strangely shaped veins began to extend throughout his brown mountain-like skin. Eyes surging with chilliness, he slowly lowered his head and looked down at Little Flame. This fight is over. A gloomy voice suddenly sounded out from the blazing giant and mountain-like giant at the same time. They took a step forward as a horrifying gale accompanied by a destructive force swiftly enveloped Lin Dong and Little Flame. The might of the soul martial arts was both scary and dreadful. A shocking energy storm frantically unfurled in the sky. Two enormous fists along with a fierce and completely untamed wind, transformed into a shadow that enveloped Lin Dong and Little Flame. The air exploded wherever the fists passed. Even some of the tall buildings in the city below were pressured by the wind till numerous cracks appeared, causing them to become shaky and unsteady. It was just a single punch, yet its power had reached such a ferocious level. Soul martial arts, huh? Lin Dong looked at the fiery red fist wind as its reflection swiftly magnified in his eyes. Although it was incomparable hot, Lin Dong could still sense a sliver of cold killing intent within it. Zhu Qianhua clearly did not plan to show any mercy in his attack. It is indeed quite strong. However, it is still not enough. A somewhat bright smile surfaced on Lin Dong's face. At this instant, the green-colored glow suddenly erupted from within his body. Bang! The green glow exploded. Before Lin Dong could counterattack, that fire giant's large fist had already arrived. Finally, it ruthlessly smashed onto the green glow that had just spread in front of everyone's eyes. Boom! Bam! Two low and deep deafening sounds were emitted from the sky in a manner that caused one's heart to be gripped with fear. The first was naturally emitted when the fire fist smashed onto the green glow, while the second was due to Little Flame in the distant being struck head-on by a fist from the giant that Mu Huang had transformed into. Some pitiful voices were immediately emitted from within the city after seeing this scene. Even if it was a 3-yuan Nirvana stage expert who had received such a fierce and powerful attack head-on, it was likely that he would have difficulty avoiding being seriously wounded. However, their pity did not last for long before it suddenly ceased. This was because they were unable to see even a single figure miserably shooting backwards from either that green glow or the blood glow. That manner was as though the terrifying strength that was contained in those two large fists was like large heavy rocks sinking into the ocean. This scene was such that anyone could tell that something strange was going on in the sky. Two enormous fists had ruthlessly smashed into the permeating green and blood glow, but there was basically no activity created. Flames slowly rose around the heart region of the fire giant in the sky. It vaguely revealed Zhu Qianhua's figure, which was hidden within it. At this moment, Zhu Qianhua's expression was a little grave and solemn as he looked at the spreading green glow. The feeling that was returned from the fist wind informed him that this heavy blow did not obtain its intended effect. The entire sky was silent. The green glow that had spread gradually showed some activity. One could see that the green glow was swiftly withdrawing. A moment later, a figure that was completely wrapped under that faint green light once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, that figure had extended his right hand and was blocking under the enormous fist that was completely out of proportion to it. However, this seemingly weak hand possessed a force that caused that enormous fist to have difficulty advancing even an inch forward. That thunderous fist of Zhu Qianhua that was sufficient to seriously injure an ordinary 3-yuan Nirvana stage expert was actually directly blocked by a single hand of Lin Dong. This scene immediately caused quite a number of people to inhale a breath of cold air. Those gazes looking at Lin Dong seemed to suggest that they were looking at a freak. Some uproar was also suddenly erupted from the other side of the city while the sound of inhalation of cold air appeared on this side. Everyone's eyes turned, only to see that the blood light in the distance had scattered. Little Flame, who was completely wrapped within a blood glow, had actually extended his hand and directly hugged a huge arm of the giant that Mu Huang had transformed into. That manner of his looked as though he wanted to toss that giant aside. You are seeking death. Mu Huang also appeared to have clearly sensed Little Flame's intention. He immediately exploded in fury. With an angry cry, another fist was once again smashed forward ruthlessly. Even the space itself had become a little distorted under that frightening energy storm. Roar! The blood glow surged around Little Flame and a low and deep tiger roar was emitted from his mouth. He did not give in even a little as he strides forward. Blood light permeated over his fist. It made contact with the enormous fist head-on without even shrinking back a little. Crack! A deep loud sound that caused one's head to become numb was emitted from the point of contact between the large and small fist. A circular seemingly substance-like energy ripple spread apart wildly. The surrounding space had completely crumbled at that instant. Dense blood glow that contained a monstrous fierceness suddenly surged out from within Little Flame's body. These blood glow seemed to have vaguely agglomerated into an enormous blood-colored light tiger outside of his body. Get lost! Little Flame's eyes were fierce. The veins on his arms were just like small wiggling snakes. A strength that was similar to a wild mountain instantly erupted. Countless number of eyes had become shocked at this moment. This was because they had seen that the enormous mountain-like giant that Mu Huang had transformed into had actually been directly lifted by Little Flame at this instant. After which, the giant spun like a windmill and was ruthlessly thrown downwards. Boom! The giant directly crushed into the city, causing many to be thrown off their feet. Numerous buildings collapsed almost immediately and the entire city had become chaotic because of this attack by Little Flame. A surprise also flashed across Lin Dong's eyes when he saw this scene. It seemed that these 4 months of training had also resulted in Little Flame's strength rising to quite a terrifying level. Ha ha, it looks like your companion is indeed no match for my brother. Lin Dong raised his head and looked at the giant, which was wrapped under a flame, in front of him before once again laughing. You are a little too talkative. It will not be too late to finish off that brother of yours once I quickly get rid of you. Zhu Qianhua was vaguely visible at the heart of the fire giant. His eyes were densely cold as he stared at Lin Dong. In the next instant, his large body suddenly shot out. Wild and violent flame swept crazily towards Lin Dong like a burning cloud. Lin Dong pressed his toes on the air and swiftly pulled his body back. The bone spear in his hand also formed numerous sharp spear shadows that smashed towards the enormous body from all directions. Clang clang. Those spear shadows landed on that enormous figure, but they merely emitted waves of clear sound. Sparks flew in all directions. However, no substantive effect had occurred. Humph, this is the flame demon body. It is impossible for you to break it. This is the same for Mu Huang. He possessed the rough mountain body. Do you think that your brother can injure him? The both of you cannot even break our defense, yet you are thinking of fighting with us? What idiotic nonsense! Zhu Qianhua coldly laughed. His tone did not lack some mockery. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes. His gaze swiftly glanced at the city below and indeed saw that the enormous body that was tossed by Little Flame had once again stood up. After which, the figure randomly grabbed an enormous rock and once again charged aggressively at Little Flame. "Are you going to rely on your tortoise shell?" A cold smile was revealed in Lin Dong's eyes. It must be said that Xu Qianhua and Mu Huang were indeed extremely troublesome to deal with. However, Lin Dong was currently no longer the same as he was 4 months earlier. "Since you are so proud of this tortoise shell, I shall break it." Lin Dong laughed coldly. "With just you?" Some disdain was lifted on the corner of Xu Qianhua's mouth as he mocked Lin Dong. "With just me?" Lin Dong smiled. His body moved and actually ceased withdrawing. Instead, he shot directly towards Xu Qianhua. "You insolent fellow!" Xu Qianhua's eyes turned chilly upon seeing this. His surging flame suddenly swarmed towards his large hand. After which, it swung towards Lin Dong. Flame Demon Palm. Countless amount of flame rose from the giant fire palm as it came whizzing downwards. A momentum that shook one's soul was vaguely emitted. That manner appeared as though there was a fierce soul accompanying it. Roar! The huge fire palm carried a shadow that covered everything below. It had basically sealed off all of Lin Dong's retreat paths. However, Lin Dong's face did not show the slightest fear. The seal formed by his hand changed and the green glow that lingered around him wiggled. It vaguely appeared to have formed a kind of unique membrane over his skin. There was actually a faint partially present dragon roar being emitted when that membrane was formed. Swoosh! The green dragon skin covered Lin Dong's body. At the same time, his body became just like a meteorite as he threw his palm forward. It actually forcefully met the giant fire palm head-on. Boom! The coldness in Xu Qianhua's eyes became even more intense upon seeing this action of Lin Dong. He let out a cold cry and the large fire palm suddenly became wild and violent. Finally, it directly exploded with a boom. Whistle whistle. A fierce and uncontrolled flame carried a powerful wind that could seriously injure a 3-yuan Nirvana stage expert as it swept over, giving it the appearance of a gorgeous flame feast. Xu Qianhua immediately let out a cold laughter upon seeing this scene. However, before his cold laughter could come to a natural stop, the smile on his face solidified. This was because there was a green glow within the firestorm sweeping over. The green glow actually charged out in a lightning-like speed, while containing a strong momentum. In the next instant, it had appeared at the heart of the giant, which was the front of Xu Qianhua's actual body. Lin Dong, you are unable to break the defense of my flame demon body. Lin Dong's appearance in front of him had clearly caused Xu Qianhua to be slightly startled. Soon after, however, the latter cried out in a firm manner. That may not necessarily be the case. Lin Dong raised his head, parted his lips and smiled at Xu Qianhua. However, that expression of his had a densely cold blade-like sharpness. Creak creak. The green glow wiggled wildly over Lin Dong's body. Immediately, tiny dense green-colored scales actually began to strangely surface on Lin Dong's right hand. The scales were not thick. However, the slight flickering green glow it emitted caused a deep unease and danger to surge up Xu Qianhua's heart. Green dragon sky-ripping hand. However, it was futile to do anything at this moment. Lin Dong's expression had turned icy cold at that instant. His hand, which was covered by green-colored scales, rushed out with lightning-like speed. It appeared to be like a ray of light that had penetrated through the empty air and ruthlessly smashed on the chest of the giant. After which, it forcefully penetrated the defense that Xu Qianhua was proud of in front of the latter's shocked eyes. This video will end here.